We have a group chat. And so one of the things that I was challenging my leaders to start focusing on for next quarter is how can they communicate that language of live, love, and lead, and in their area of like specialty or expertise, whatever they're focused on.
Welcome to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. As leaders, you have the ability to design and lead culture intentionally. Hear from culture leaders who are moving from a values list to values lived.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me today Marybeth Wade from Jacksonville, Texas. Welcome to the show, Marybeth.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So Marybeth is Chick-fil-A owner-operator in Jacksonville, Texas, and she's been there for several years. In fact, Marybeth, you've been with Chick-fil-A for quite a few years, but before we get into your Chick-fil-A story, wanted listeners to be able to get to know you a little bit and hear your journey. And one of the questions I like to ask leaders is about their superpower and kryptonite. And this is just a way to understand your strengths and weaknesses. So as you thought about this question, what would you say is a leadership superpower for you?
I would say tenacity. I don't give up easily. So if you tell me that I need to work on something or do something, I will research it, study it, and figure it out. My goal is excellence daily, and so I really try hard to work on any opportunities I may have to become the best at what I do.
It's one of the things I love about you, Marybeth, is your tenacity. So love it. That's a great answer, and I know your team sees that as well. Now, every superpower has a kind of a challenging side, right? There's a kryptonite mixed in there. So what would be your leadership kryptonite?
Can be perceived as not having empathy or I don't care. I'm a very direct and straight to the point type person. And so I've been in sports my whole life. And so I tend to act like a coach on the sidelines, and in game time, like meal of lunch rush or dinner rush, I'm very straight and blunt. And the goal is to help them and not hurt them. But that can come across as intimidating to some of my team members, especially when they are brand new. This is when I end up usually having issues is with a new hire, because they don't know me personally and what my heart is, which is to truly help them and make them better, which is what a coach does.
Such good awareness. Thanks for just being aware of that. I mean, we all have a different way to approach, getting results, and that your confidence, I could see how that could come across, and other leaders struggle with that too. And so you've just gone out of your way to make sure people understand your heart. So I appreciate that about you, just your own awareness about your own leadership style. You mentioned that you've always been involved in sports or been sports for a long time. I'm really fascinated in your story. I noticed that you were part of a hockey league, but you were the only female in that hockey league. Tell me a little bit about that hockey league and some of the experiences you had there. But then it led you to an interesting other sport. So what drew you into hockey?
So I am a very competitive person. It's in my family. If you don't know and you're working out with me, we're competing, whether you know me or not, or whatever we do. I'm always in competition. And so when someone tells me I can't do something, or it's out of reach, or it's something women don't do, or something to that retrospect, my mindset goes challenge accepted. And what can I do? And so one of the first things I started doing was playing hockey. There was some guys in my neighborhood that played when I was younger out on the streets. And I was like, I want to learn this and I want to figure out how to do this. And so I started taking classes and learning how to play hockey, and it just became a passion of mine. And then I ended up playing for the University of North Texas. And I was actually the only female in the league. It was called the South Collegiate Hockey League. It's not a huge like league where we have a bunch of spectators or anything like that. But it was a lot of fun. And I ended up being the only female in the league, which I love the challenge of that. While I was in a hockey tournament, I actually, because you asked about what that went to, Well, when I was in a hockey tournament in Las Vegas with a guys team, it wasn't for the college at the time. It was just a separate hockey tournament. There was a females league there, and they asked where I was from, and I told them I was from Dallas. And ironically, they were playing women's football at our stadium at UNT, which is Fouts Field. And so they said, would you be interested in playing football? Because you're playing with the guys and you're roughing them up, and it feels like this would be a good sport for you. And I told them I'd think about it. And I ended up playing for the first, for 1 year while I was playing hockey at the same time. It was a blast. I loved it. Didn't really know what I was doing, but they kind of taught us the foundations and kind of learned a little bit about it. And then, I ended up actually tearing my rotator cuff, and my parents were like, "You can't play both sports if you want us to support you in college." And so I chose to stay with hockey until I graduated, and then I picked up football again. So I ended up playing. It's called the WFA, Women's Football Association. It's tackle, full contact, same rules as the NFL. The only difference is we kicked off on the 35-yard line, and our ball was a little bit smaller, primarily because I have tiny hands as a female. Our hands are smaller, so we need, the ball smaller. Yeah, so that it was a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness. So wait a minute. There's another part of this story though. You all ended up kind of making national news. I mean, you won. What? Tell us about where did y'all go with that?
Well, so the first year I played, we we never won a game that I was a part of. And then when I came back to football, it was women trying to figure it out. This league had 63 teams in the nation, and some of these women were really good. And we didn't, again, know what we were doing. So our coach, his name was Mike Ellington, came, and him and his wife bought the team. They purchased our team, and they took over. And they literally focused on foundations the entire time, from plays to reviewing film to all of that. And in 2010, we won the championship of our league, got a big giant Super Bowl ring, and it was a lot of fun.
That's incredible. I love it. We are Super Bowl champion right here on the podcast. So you're our first Super Bowl champion, football champion on the podcast. So good to have you. That's such a great story. What a testament to your tenacity, right? Of not really taking no for an answer, pushing your way through a men's hockey league, and then that opened up another opportunity to get into this whole football world and learning, and then that great story. I think we might hear that show up later about focusing on fundamentals. So I can see already, as I've known you for a while, I can see where some of those early learnings are now playing forward into your business even today. So great story. Thanks for sharing. So Marybeth, one of the things that you and I've been talking about quite a bit is your team culture. And I just love what you're doing with your team culture and how you really have been able to get your team to buy in. What are some of the things that you've intentionally done to build team culture?
So we had a culture that I wanted for the business when I first started at the Jacksonville Chick-fil-A, but it was my personal culture, and I didn't have buy-in from my leaders. And so Chick-fil-A Inc. had a huge session where they were just talking about culture and trying to get our culture to the way that we want to integrate in the entire business. And so when I started working with you, actually, you helped us. We sat down with my leaders, and we talked through what our current culture was and where we want to aspire to, and we kind of created Live, Love, and Lead. Live has to do with the results side of things, with a growth mindset, striving for excellence and being a good steward, to love, which is about team and being a good servant, having a team spirit, and also being able to develop others. And then intertwined with the third concept of lead, which has to do with character, and being a good example, having high integrity, and enjoying what you do. And all of that leads to care, which kind of all encompassing with some of Chick-fil-A's values as well. I'm a huge ambassador of the brand, been with Chick-fil-A for 25 years total, not as an operator, but with the brand. And I want to make sure that those are clearly defined. So that's one of the first things we did, was define what we wanted our culture to look like, and even scenarios around that. Another piece that we added was an open door policy, and also tried to create a culture of second chances. And so anytime you're trying to do that culture, you have to have trust with your team, and they have to be able to know that, hey, you know what, I messed up, growth mindset, but I want to get better. And so we really challenge our team to come to us with problems, admit what they did, and then talk about how to fix it for the future. And we work hard to not get mad or frustrated or upset when they do mess up, especially when they admit it and then they find a way to change from there. We also started engaging in the team member engagement surveys as well as the exit surveys, to find out why people were leaving, and then also what they did enjoy about our business. We have also been doing team member outings and events. I've been very adamant about this from the beginning, but we are continuing to do that and seeing more and more come to those. My goal is to have one a quarter, some type of get together, where like last summer we went to the lake, and we took the boat out, and we played volleyball and did fun things like that. And then in the fall we did painting of pumpkins and did a cute fall design on our pumpkins. Just something small, but it just helps build that team. And then another thing we recently started was triannual meetings with our team members. So we're really big on that development of our team, but there was nothing for a team member that was in that between stage. There was no touch points. And so we've been very intentional to start those touch points with the team members that have been with us longer than the first 30, 60, 90 days. And also ones that maybe aren't aspiring to be a leader per se, but we just need to check in on them and see how they're doing.
My goodness. Okay, so there's a few things unpacked there. I love it. I love how top of mind so many of those things are. Just kind of reflecting with you here, Mary Beth. I love how intentional you are about. I'm asking about culture and this. How you develop culture, and you were really able to outline plans, but really systems of how do we grow our culture? What do we do on a regular basis, whether it's, the outings or the culture brand itself, of how you've designed that. And let me back up to the culture brand that you've outlined of live, love, lead. And very quickly you explained, what does love mean? Okay, that means these three things. And what is live, love, and lead? What do each of these mean? And you were able to unpack it. I Just for the listener, they may not have realized that you were intentionally mentioning about three things you're looking for each of those areas, and that you're measuring in their behavior. And then another thing our listeners might have missed as you explained that, but I caught your intentionality about it, was you said care really fits in the dead center of all three of those. Care can only happen if we're actually delivering on results, working together as a team, and delivering on our personal character. And so if you imagine that as like a Venn diagram in those three overlapping circles, the overlap part is care. And so the way you hit care is deliver on results, deliver on being a team member, and deliver on self. And so just for our listeners' sake, I wanted them to be able to see some of the intentionality within those designs of what you've done there. So good job on finding a way to really, you had a culture, like you said, but this was a way to really dial it in a lot more clearly with your team. So I love what you've done with that. Good job.
I would say that we have also taken systems and processes and redefined them with our culture brand, to help us. So, for example, I do feel like it begins and ends with the leadership team and myself. And so my team, we took the culture brand and blew it up and put it out in the kitchen so that everyone can see it. We have it posted in the office, so that my leaders are constantly seeing that, and they pull it out when they have discussions. And so on all of our training material, we have the culture brand at the bottom, like a header and a footer. We have it at the bottom of all those so that there's something they can just easily look at and reference. We've created Credo cards. I don't know if you've ever heard of Credo cards, but those are it was something that came from Ritz-Carlton a long time ago. And I kind of took that and took it as my own. And we put the culture brand on that with our vision and our mission. And our team members, when they're hired, they get one of those to take home and to study. And then it's talked about often so that they can kind of understand that, as well as my everyday language. So when I come in, I'm asking my team, how are you living today? What are you doing? And how did you lead? And how did you love? We took our hiring questions and we integrated live, love, and lead in those questions so that we're more intentional with our hiring. So we're not hiring as much as we were doing before, but we're hiring stronger talent that fits with our culture from the beginning. And so that's really helping. And then our one-on-ones, we've taken the culture brand and put questions into the one-on-ones that are all encompassed around culture brand.
I love it. So, wow. Poster child here for culture brand. Thank you for, yeah, you've shown the audience um, how culture brand can affect so many different systems and areas of the business, from hiring to discipline to coachable conversations, to you walking in and having very targeted, challenging conversations with your leaders to make sure they're delivering on all these areas. And so one of the things I believe about leadership is part of leadership is language. What's our language of how we operate together? And so you've really adopted this language in a way to simplify and make it easy for your team to win at culture. So good job on that. Um, so your team seems really bought in. What would be, and then this might be a challenging question. You may or may not leave this in the episode, right? But where do you feel like your team, your next step in culture development is? It sounds like you've got it at your level, you've got it at your top leader level. Where's the next level of growth for culture brand for your team?
So the goal is that it trickles down. So we work, I'm really working with my directors right now and getting that in their everyday language. And then I feel like the next step would be for them to start challenging their leaders to do the same. And then to even push them to talk more about it in our everyday conversations. So we have a group chat. And so one of the things that I was challenging my leaders to start focusing on for next quarter is how can they communicate that language of live, love, and lead, and in their area of like specialty or expertise, whatever they're focused on. You know, if they're working on the AHA system, which we do in our kitchen, you know, is it they talking about how they lived today with the AHA system and what did they do to be a good steward of the business, and maybe it's about what they did to reduce waste in the kitchen. And so we're really trying to take that a step deeper. But our first step is the directors and getting them. I have 4 top directors, and they're the ones that are starting with that language and the systems and processes. So we are actually Chick-fil-A has classes that are called Ascend, and one of the Ascend classes is about systems and processes. So each of my top directors are taking that class right now, and then our goal is to take that and continue to throw culture brand into every one of our systems, not just the couple things I explained. So hopefully we can get that done and then dive into next level leadership.
I love it. So yeah, thank you. There's always more, there's always more room to grow, right? And so, but y'all have made so many great strides, and you see the impact that's made, and now you're saying, okay, there's other systems where this could be really helpful. Let's insert it here and talk about it in terms of live, love, and lead. Good job.
I will say that our result wise, we are a newer restaurant. We've been here for 3 years now. And my team, I had no one with Chick-fil-A experience. And so it's been a rough ride to get where we are today. But our turnover was extremely high. It was I'm just being honest here, it was 141%. And when we really started with culture brand and incorporating that in what we do, which was back in November. So it's been about 4 months since then. We've seen our turnover decrease by 25%. And so it's been a huge drop just in those months. And I do feel like it has to do with the changes that we've implemented.
Wow. Wow. 25. Okay. So let's, I'm curious now. I know we've talked about this some, but one question I may not have asked you yet is where do you think the impact is happening? Is it happening what I would call at the front door as you interview people and vet them to see if they fit your culture, or is it does it keep them around because they're more clear about culture, or a little bit of both? Where do you see the impact for that 25% change?
I honestly think it's everywhere. Because yes, at the door we're talking to them when they're getting hired, so they are hearing about the brand from the very beginning. They understand, they know what they're getting into. So most of the time, it's not, I didn't know this is what I signed up for. They and when they know that, and you have the right people in place, they're just willing to soak up what you give them. And then we have a clear definition of expectations throughout, their entire time. And then I think the other piece is we have those check-ins now, where we're intentionally stopping and saying, what can we do for you? How can we love on you and serve you, and what's missing, and just having that open door, like, we need you to be honest with us so that we can, make changes in the business. With every pair of hands comes a free brain, and I'm not the smartest one in there. And I know my team, I mean, I have some people that are top in their school. They're probably smarter than I am. But so I want my leaders, and even myself, to leverage that and figure out, like, okay, what can we do to change, and how can we make this difference?
What a beautiful way to say it. Yes. With every pair of hands comes a brain, a free brain. So getting those brains activated, getting them to really own their area, own their own attitude, own, their work environment, but also own the task that they've been given. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to say it. So, and that speaks to your humility too. I mean, I know you're very driven, you love to win, but you're mixing in a humility of, hey, I don't know everything, and I actually need to surround myself with people that are smarter in areas or can focus on areas that I can't focus on. You can't do it all yourself. Even your leaders, right, can't do it all themselves. It's a good job on that.
I think, to piggyback on what you said, uh, I know my weakness is empathy. People that don't know me are feel like I have no empathy or I don't care, which is not true. I 100% care about my team and want to help them. And so I have made strides to work on those relationships with my new hires, because it's the new hires that I typically intimidate, or they think that way of me. And so I now have a new hire dinner that anytime someone's hired, or in orient, I used to do all of this. So this is where they learned who I was at the beginning, and now I have managers that do that. And so I've learned that I still have to be somewhat a part of that. And so in orientation, I go and introduce myself, and then within a month I schedule a new hire dinner with them, so that it's not about work. It's the new hire dinner is just to talk about what they're doing and who they are and why they're here, and that's it, and to hear a little bit about me and my story. And then I feel like those events that we're doing, it helps them be more comfortable to approach me.
That, yes, great practice. I mean, I think for the leaders that I talk to, also that are very results oriented, it is, you have to go kind of out of your way to let them see your heart, and to know your intention behind, we're moving fast. I want you to understand why we're moving fast and what we're doing. So good of you to really get ahead of that and spend time investing in them and sharing your story. Well, Mary Beth, you have such a great history, a long history with Chick-fil-A. Started in '99 working as a team member. You worked basically every position. Then you got into training at the Chick-fil-A Center, and eventually moved into LDP. But there was a moment in there where you'd applied several times and you were receiving some no's. Tell us a little bit about those no's and then the yes that happened.
So I will say, I'll kind of back up for a second. In '99, I had my operator Raphael McLeod sat me down and said, "Have you ever thought about becoming an owner operator?" And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I want to be a veterinarian. But shortly after that, I felt like that was where God was leading me, was Chick-fil-A and becoming an owner operator. So I set off as my first goal to be the youngest female operator. I got in and out of college in 4 years, and I was ready. This is 2006. I was like, I'm ready to go. And at the time, you had to have approval from your consultant, the field consultant at the time, and then they would give you an application to apply if you were ready. Well, I had, they told me, no, not yet. You have a lot to learn. Why don't you become a general manager first and figure that out? And so I did. I did that for a little bit, got told no several other times through other consultants that came through. Not yet. No, not no completely, just no, not yet. And that there was a lot I needed to work on. So I joined Toastmasters and learned how to talk more professionally, and really dove into my business acumen and how to talk about results in the business and how I achieved those results. For a while there, I wasn't great at explaining my story, and so I learned how to do that. And then I got told I had an opportunity to go into the GOS program, and it was when it first started, and I got interviewed by Andrew Cathy actually, and he said that he felt like that the GOS side was not for me, and that I would probably be better in the IM program. So I went over and applied for the IM program, and got told no, not yet. And I actually got an opportunity right after that to work for the support center as a trainer, and then also as a reinvestment coach and supporting operators that got new processes and systems like centerline kitchens, multi-lane order points, IPOS, lean chicken thawing. I did all the training for those operators. And then I helped with recurring operational excellence trainings where they would come to the support center and actually learn about that. And at one point, I got an extreme hard no. And it really hurt. In fact, it was a conversation I was having with with my operator at the time, and he said, they just don't think that becoming an operator is for you, and that you need to move on. And so that was the first time I got a complete no. Before, it was usually no, not yet. And I was crushed. I had a lot of relationships with people at the support center because I worked there. Andre Kennebrew was one of them. He actually was a consultant that came out in 2008 that had told me no, not yet. And so this was in 2012. Well, actually, it was 2013-ish when he met with me. And Andre said, hey, what it is you're going up against people that are CEOs of Chili's or that have all of this professional experience, and all you have is Chick-fil-A. And he said, you need to build that gap, and you need to figure out how to fill in the in between. And he said, you know what? I'm starting a new thing. They've tasked me with figuring out how to combine the grand opening program and the IM program together. I would like you on my team. Would you want to do that? And of course. And so I set off to do that with him, and learned a lot. But as I was in that system, the goal was that it was a year and a half process, turned to 2 years. I was at the end of the 2-year mark and hadn't got an application. And you had to get approval from them to get that application. And I did not get that approval. And I was in Florida at Pembroke's Lakes Mall, and I at an IM assignment, and Tim Tasopoulos came by. And this is they don't typically come to an
Now,
IM
hang on
location.
for the listeners that don't know who Tim is, right? Tim, at that time, he's the executive vice president of all of Chick-fil-A, and he's stopping by your mall location. That's just,
Yeah.
just to understand, kind of put context here. This is the top leader of all operations, and he's visiting your mall.
I couldn't believe it. I got the email a day before, so there wasn't any time to prepare or do anything. And I was like, okay, come on. Because I had so much experience in training, my team actually was doing everything by the book. They were following all of Pathway at the time. I don't think it was called Pathway E-Train, I believe was the name of it. Anyways, they were following all of Chick-fil-A procedures. And my team was on top of making great fresh food, good tasting food, great service. I had won the mall management over at the time. When I first took over, there was some conflict, and they were very proud of what we had done, my team and I had done in that mall. And so while I was there, and again, this was all a God thing. It was not me, but my team executed perfectly. And Tim Tasopoulos got an amazing experience and sandwich. And then the mall managers came out and talked to him as well about, what we had done in the mall and how changed that relationship. And so shortly after that, I actually got permission to apply, and I ended up at the Lufkin Mall as my first location in 2017. So it took me 25 years, but I mean, it took me actually 18 years, but I was able to start my first restaurant in 2017 at the mall.
What a great story. And what a testament to your tenacity, right? That no, you don't accept no, and let's find a way to get a yes and keep pushing forward. So congratulations. Way to be just a tenacious leader, pushing through and not ever really accepting no. And really that's kind of a theme for every day, right? We can't accept no in this situation. We can't, when we face a problem, we really need to push through and find a yes here. So I see that in you. I see that in how you're developing your leaders and their own resiliency. So way to go on being tenacious. Good job, Mary Beth. Well, Mary Beth, one of the questions I like to ask is, what's a perceived failure, something that seemed like a failure at the time that ended up propelling you forward?
So when I started the mall, I took that over in 2017. I was excited. I was like, I'm gonna get in here. I'm gonna teach everyone the fundamentals and basics. We're gonna do everything by the book. Follow Chick-fil-A, because I wanted to make sure we were doing the fundamentals. I know that's the reason for success in general. And so I got in within my first year. Sales were down. We were down 0.5% in sales, 6% in transactions. And I was like, okay, I've got to do something, because otherwise my mall is going to continue to lose sales and lose transactions. And so the next year, after I got the foundations, we started exploring other options. So we did mall deliveries, we did curbside. I signed up for Uber Eats and DoorDash and Grubhub and Easy Cater, anything I could get my hands on to help kind of continue to grow the business. After that year, sales were still down. We were down 1% and transactions were down 4%. So transactions total were down 10% over the 2 years combined from when I started. And then we were going to lose Sears. That was our major box store in our mall. And I knew something had to change. And so my husband and I were thinking of ways. We're talking about doing deliveries. This is before Chick-fil-A delivery really came out. And so we were like, okay, well, what if we did a drive-through? The number one complaint in Lufkin was the other drive-through across the street was so full during lunch they couldn't get in, and the parking lot was tiny. And so I said, well, what if I did that? And so I heard my consultant at the time told me there were 4 other malls that had done it, and so I went and tried to talk to those operators to see what they did. One operator took stuff from another restaurant that closed down. I was like, okay, that's not going to work. One told me she took just plugged it right in, and their exit was right in front of the door, and they just went right there. I was like, well, I've got a far walk, that's not going to work. And another one said, well, Chick-fil-A will support you in the IPOS equipment. You just got to ask them. So I did. I asked Chick-fil-A. They said, no, we're not going to support you. You only have 4 cars in curbside. You need to have at least 75 cars before we even, have the money to invest in the equipment for IPOS. So like, okay, well, what can I do? My husband was an IT guy, and he said, well, let's get the longest Cat5 cable we can get, so we can still plug it into our system and not break any codes or anything, and into the restaurant system, as well as the longest extension cord we could find. And then we bought a utility cart and put the register on it and literally rolled that bad boy out
Oh my
to the street.
goodness.
Yeah.
That's
I had
awesome.
worked with the mall management, got a place for us to set up, and got a 5x5 tent, and made sure we were ready. And the first month, we averaged 25 transactions a day through our drive-through, which was what Chick-fil-A said I needed for IPOS. And so we ended up getting IPOS the very next month. And by the end of the year, our sales were up 26%. Transactions were up 18%, which with Chick-fil-A, that's symbol. So we were able to achieve that. And the very next year, January and February, we were up 30%. So our sales were just ever growing. But then COVID hit. COVID hit, that was tough. I chose not to close down. I said, you know what, I'm on a roll here. I'm not closing down. I want to pay my team. I would like for them to, not lose money during this situation, but I'm in a mall and most malls were closing. I asked the general manager what I could do, and he said, well, we have security here 11 to 7. So you can do what you need, but you got to keep your doors shut. It's like, all right. So I shut my doors and we just ran drive through. And that's kept us up. Our sales ended up being a 2% increase for the year. But this is actually what gave me that opportunity to move on to a freestanding restaurant, because Chick-fil-A saw I had what it took to be able to move forward. And so now I'm here in Jacksonville living my dream.
So I'm noticing a theme here, Marybeth. If you want Marybeth to do something, just tell her no, and then she's just going to find a way to make it happen. What a beautiful story! I love that. Found the yes in there and pushed through and made it happen. Great job! What a great story! I can see it. I can imagine the whole thing playing out there at the mall. So what a beautiful story! Congratulations on your freestander. You've been there 3 years now and got a great team. We're looking forward to great days ahead for you and your team. Marybeth, thank you for taking time to be on the show. I enjoy our relationship. I love being your coach. I love meeting with your team and hanging out with them. Our team has just enjoyed working with y'all and seeing your leaders grow and really take Culture Brand to all new levels in your organization. So look forward to having you back on the show sometime, but thank you for joining us here today.
I appreciate your support and all the help that you've done and your guidance through this. This has been great for us.
Well, we love sharing your story. Looking forward to getting this story out for the world to hear. So we'll see you again. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Visit our website at buildyourculturebrand.com for our free culture brand assessment. See you next time. We would like to note that Leaders Q serves individual owner-operators and their teams and is not affiliated, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Chick-fil-A Incorporated.